their best to pick up the pieces tonight. Well, tomorrow marks a week since parts of Gauteng and KwaZulu-Natal were looted. Soldiers have since been deployed to try and quell the tensions, while some citizens have taken it upon themselves to protect their properties. The violence erupting just hours after former President Jacob Zuma was jailed. To help us make sense of how the country has been plunged into this crisis, we're joined by specialist legal journalist Karyn Maughan with News 24. Karyn, a very good evening to you. One of the arguments that you are making is that what has resulted in the situation today of lawlessness, of the kind of disorder that we have seen, really has its roots in the inability of the state to do its job in the first instance by holding the former president accountable for his contempt of the state capture inquiry.
Absolutely, Kathy. And essentially what happened, I mean, the major dissenting judgment that was given in the Constitutional Court when it ruled, made the decision to imprison Jacob Zuma for 15 months was by Justice Liana Turan, who took serious issue with the Zondo inquiry for failing, she said, to go to the National Prosecuting Authority and to lay a criminal case of contempt against Jacob Zuma, as she said Deputy Chief Justice Raymond Zondo had promised to do. But Justice Liana Turan is in fact incorrect. In the aftermath of Jacob Zuma walking out of the commission in November last year, the inquiry did lay a charge, and it also laid a charge against SAA, former board SAA chairperson Judy Mieni, when she used the name of a witness whose identity had been protected to preserve his own safety. In that instance, the inquiry also laid a charge. In both instances, the Hawks and the National Prosecuting Authority have failed to instigate criminal prosecutions in relation to that. So, you know, Justice Turan, if she was operating in the assumption of a working and functional justice system, may very well have a point where she questions why the Commission would have to resort to going to the judiciary to seek compliance with its directives and orders, and with, you know, to ensure that Jacob Zuma would actually obey summons. Unfortunately, however, the NPA's failures in respect of this particular matter demonstrate its apparent inability to do that very basic, very clear job in circumstances where both of those incidents were caught on camera, where there was manifest evidence that could have been used to format a prosecution, and where we now see a pathology of law enforcement seemingly incapable of dealing with matters when they happen, and belatedly coming to the party, as it were, after communities in many respects are forced to become their own guardians, their own protectors, and in some instances, unfortunately, to take the law into their own hands.
Karyn, what reasons has the NPA given for its inaction in terms of the charges that were brought by the Zondo Commission of Inquiry? Why has nothing become of that matter?
Well, the explanation from the NPA is that they confirm that they have in fact been given a docket by the Hawks, but that they wanted certain statements from the inquiry in order to pursue the prosecution. I have been able to ascertain from very impeccable sources with the inquiry that, in fact, they wanted statements, witness statements from DCJ Raymond Zondo and from evidence leader Paul Pretorius about what occurred during that walkout. And both have taken the position that it's simply legally untenable for them to do so. Zondo, because he's the chairperson of that hearing, and Paul Pretorius, because of the kind of legal requirements of his position as evidence leader, it would not be tenable for him to do so. It would actually make the inquiry potentially legally vulnerable if they were involved in some kind of criminal litigation in circumstances where, you know, all of this stuff is recorded, there are transcripts, there is evidence. The NPA hasn't specifically addressed that with me. They've just simply said that they believe that certain statements need to be obtained for the case to be pursued. And given that the inquiry is clearly not going to, provide those statements, I would be very surprised, Kathy, if there is ever a criminal prosecution of Jacob Zuma in respect of that walkout. And that level of paralysis and, the failure of the NPA to actually take proper steps to ensure a prosecution in a case where there's clearly evidence that the former president has to answer to, I think, gives a lot of people pause to reflect on the fact that perhaps this institution that is supposedly in a new dawn of pursuit of cases, no matter without fear or favor, is still stymied in the kind of paralysis that defined its lack of action previously.
Karyn, are there other people who have had their matters in terms of how they have behaved towards the Zondo Commission of Inquiry referred to the National Prosecuting Authority?
Well, the big case, of course, was Dudu Myeni, who used the name of a witness who was in witness protection after being explicitly warned by DCJ Raymond Zondo that he had ordered that not happen. And nothing has happened in relation to that case. We know Kate Hofmeyr recently, when Dudu Myeni was back at the inquiry, I think around in May this year, saying that, she had been told, but, had no real confirmation of it, that the Hawks were obtaining warning statements in that matter. But again, there has been no pursuit of those prosecutions. And it engendered a boldness, a sense of a lack of accountability, which I think poisoned the waters in terms of the litigation between the former president and the commission, and put the Constitutional Court in a position where it needed to step in and be the ultimate arbiter of accountability and a form of justice. And that is not ideal. Jacob Zuma's argument in terms of why he should not be going to prison, very much founded on Justice Liana Charon's contention that this was a matter that should have been brought before a criminal court of law. And in many respects, it should have been. But unfortunately, for whatever reason, the NPA seems absolutely paralyzed, as is the Hawks, to pursue prosecutions timeously. And that's the other issue, Kathy. We seem to have a culture of law enforcement coming very, very late to the party in circumstances where they need to be on the ground, they need to be dealing with matters if and when they happen, and they need to be showing that they're in control of a situation. And unfortunately, that lack of control, unfortunately, has come to define, the circumstances we find ourselves in terms of the looting and destruction that we've seen over the past few days. And when they eventually do arrive, it's to, arrest scavengers when the properties are already destroyed. That is not law enforcement that gives any South African a sense of safety, protection, and ultimately the guarantee of justice.
Are they being held accountable enough?
I don't think so. I think that, there has been a rhetoric from the National Prosecuting Authority that this is a new dawn. When Shamila Batoye came into office, she spoke about the cancer of corruption, the cancer of impunity. There have been a few cases here and there where high-profile arrests have been made. As yet, very few, if any, successful prosecutions in relation to that matter, and absolutely no press conferences for a very long time from the National Prosecuting Authority. And when they put out press statements and say, "Oh, we're taking this very seriously. We're going to go after the inciters. We're going to go after the looters." What does that mean? We've seen one arrest. Today, the police announcing that one of the instigators has been arrested. That will obviously be pivotal in terms of making sure that there is some form of accountability. But it means nothing if you say you're taking things seriously, if you're not actually coming up with specific plans and specific strategies about how to deal with the situation and ensure justice and accountability. So no, I don't think so. And I think that for too long now, law enforcement, and particularly the NPA, I have to argue, has been given a free ride, and it has to stop for the sake of a functional, consistent democracy.
Certainly the need for transparency within that organization, and even some of these high-profile cases that you've mentioned, Karyn. We just need to know what is going on in that institution. I'm sure we can count on one hand the number of interviews that the NDPP has given since coming into office, and that really tells the story in and of itself. Karyn Maughan is a specialist legal reporter.